Hello, friends. Welcome. Hello. Good afternoon. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, Eduardo Placer. Eduardo is the CEO and founder of Fearless Communicators. He's a public speaking coach, a story doula, and an international community builder. He's a global facilitator who has led workshops with groups at Tik Tok, HBO, Google, Bank of America-Merrill Lynch, Yale, the Juilliard School, and the Wharton School of Business. Private clients include US presidential candidates, UN diplomats, industry leaders, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and social activists. He was a professional actor for 15 years, working across the US in over 38 plays and musicals. He holds a BA in English from the University of Pennsylvania and an M.F.A. in acting from the University of California, San Diego. I am beyond thrilled that Eduardo is here with us today to share his journey, his insights, and to share about himself. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the stage over to Eduardo Placer.
Before I begin, there is a series of rituals that I do to ground myself, and also our audience to open this ritual space together. The first thing that I want to do as part of our global work with the facilitator that I have deep relationship with is to begin by acknowledging elder in the room and requesting permission of our elders to begin. Now, I'm not going to call anyone out and say you're the elder. That's not how this is going to work. But there are various ways that we can locate eldership. Yes, it can be age, but it could also be, we have high school seniors here possibly, we have college seniors. This is many times that we've been in this conference. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna request permission of elders to begin. Please self-locate yourself in that conversation. And then the opportunity to affirm that is with this gesture, which I call elevated sparkleation. So if we can get a little started, let's get the elevated sparkleation ready, please, just to practice. I see that, love that. Okay, beautiful. So elders in our community, are we ready to begin? Yes, thank you. The second thing that I do is a land acknowledgement. So as part of our global work with Fearless Communicators, I found myself in 2017 in Australia and leading one of our signature programs, which we call Fearless Fire, Public Speaking for Visionary Thought Leaders. And I was so moved by that ritual and experience, I since brought that forward into all of our in-person and virtual facilitations. So for myself, located here in Kent, Ohio, I want to acknowledge that I am a guest on Erie land, and I want to acknowledge ancestors and elders past, present, and emerging. And finally, I think it's an important moment to note the water that we are all collectively swimming in. First, it's National Coming Out Day. Yes! Work, bitches! Get it! And I think that it is important to note in this moment of history, herstory, theirstory, to name the collective water that we are swimming in. So acknowledge the existence and prevalence of structural institutional racism, misogyny, ableism, ageism, and LGBTQ+ phobia. And my personal commitment to use my voice, my body, and my story to dismantle those systems to ensure justice and equity for all. So with that, my friends, we're ready to get this party started. So I have, you can applaud, that's totally fine. Yes! Don't be shy. So I have titled this keynote, a keynote in 3 acts with a prologue and an epilogue because I'm a little extra. And what I'm hoping to do over the course of our journey together is share with you the formative experience that led to me and my desire to be a professional actor. The second piece is what I learned as a professional actor and that applied to a career in the theater and also as an entrepreneur. And then finally, I wanted to share with you about the business and the extraordinary work that we do elevating historically marginalized voices and leaders all over the world. So we're going to begin with a prologue. So the smell of entrecôte steak permeates the Miami Beach apartment. It is 1984. And my grandparents, who live in Delaware, have come down for the summer. And they have a 2-bedroom apartment. And my brother and my sister and I are spending the entire summer with them. And it is wonderful. And my grandfather, Jose Maria, one night after dinner, grabs a globe that he brought from Delaware to the dinner table, and he says, "We're going to play a game together." And he takes out this globe, and he starts tracing his finger, and I grab a pad and a pencil, and he starts naming the countries of the world and their capitals. The capital of Paraguay is Asunción. The capital of Nicaragua is Managua. The capital of Iceland is Reykjavik. The capital of Egypt is Cairo. The capital of Pakistan is Islamabad. And as we're doing this gesture, he's also able to talk about Spain, where he was born and raised, and where his family fled because of the Franco regime in the 1930s. They went from Spain to Cuba, where in 1959, 1960s, my family fled also because of the Castro regime. And in that ritual, I was able to know my own family historical narrative, and as it was situated and located in a map. And that exercise sparked the curiosity and the imagination of thinking of what a life without limits would look like. And now, an actor prepares. Tick tock, all our eyes are on the clock. 10:57, 10:58, 10:59, beep, beep, beep. The alarm goes off and we line up and we walk out into a kindergarten playground. It is Miami, Florida. It is 1983, and the battle of the kissing girls has been raging for months. And the game is that the girls chase after the boys and the boys run for their lives. But today is going to be unlike any other day in the battle of the kissing girls. The boys are led by Brett MacGyver. He is blonde, perfect teeth, perfect smile, and they line up by the slides. The girls are led by Brooke Tinsley. She has pigtails, freckles, fast. They line up by the seesaw. And between the two is no man's land. And today, Brett MacGyver does the unthinkable. He steps into no man's land. Audible gasp from all the kindergartners on the playground as Brooke and her gaggle of girls giggle. She takes the bait and then also steps into no man's land. And then step by step, by step by step, they approach at high noon, standing but touching noses for what feels like a lifetime, until Brett leans in and kisses Brooke Tinsley. I then scream at the top of my lungs, the only thing that I could imagine this could mean, which is that Brooke and Brett are getting married. And then I lead a parade through the kindergarten playground with a song that I make up in the moment that goes like, Brooke and Brett are getting married, Brooke and Brett are getting married. And in my mind, it's like Cirque du Soleil. And on the seesaws, the kids are like alternating, flipping, and then sticking the landing. And on the slides, the kids are diving head first, and then they roll, and then they also stick the landing. And two innocent kids are like patty caking by the shrubbery. And I part through the leaves, and I scream, Brooke and Brett are getting married. And then beep, 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 the alarm goes off, and we stop. And we line up, and we walk back into that kindergarten classroom. And this is Miami, Florida, so the air conditioning is blasting. And the sweat is pouring down my face. And my heart is beating wildly, and I think to myself, what brave new world is this? My friends, that was the birth of a self-diagnosed acute condition that I now thrive with, and it's called show-tonitis. Anyone else have it here, I imagine? Yes. And that is this ever-waking moment that I have, this desire, this taste, this temptation to break out and be received by the world in song and dance. And let me tell you something, after that moment, that show-tonitis was on fire. And I found myself in the AYSO soccer league. Now, my twin brother, I have an identical twin brother, Javier, and my brother played goalie and forward and defense. He played all the positions, and I could care less. And I was like somewhere left fullback, whatever the position is, and I would pick up rocks, and I swear I am the only child that finished an AYSO soccer league with a rock collection named after the Von Trapp children. And then I find myself in second grade at show and tell. Does everyone here remember show and tell? I was ready. And I brought this stuffed animal seal that I called Sammy the Seal. Yes. And very cute. And then I don't have it anymore. My mom got rid of it. I'm still in therapy about it. So I grab the seal. Mrs. Fox says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yes." And I run to the front of the class, and I'm staring at my classmates, and I take a deep breath, and I say something magical like, "Seals are mammals. They live in the water. They eat fish. Sometimes they're eaten by sharks." And I thought to myself, if there's a Tony Award for best second grade performance of a show and tell, clearly I was the winner. And then I look at my classmates, and I could see they are not interested at all. And then I just feel myself utter, and I named him after someone in this class. And yes, exactly, that pause, everyone was like, oh, nobody was interested. All of a sudden, everybody was interested. Now, the name of the seal was Sammy the Seal, but what I chose to do in that moment was say, I named the seal after Brett MacGyver. Remember the blonde poplar boy? He's the boy that I had a crush on in second grade in Miami, Florida in 1986, and it didn't go well. And that was the first moment that I tasted terror in my mouth, standing in front of people. I spoke the truth, and the room wasn't ready for it. And that light, that show-tonitis started to diminish, and I realized that the space of me showing up is actually not safe for the truth of who I am, and I gotta put on a role. I gotta start adopting a character, and that character is the perfect child. And so a couple years later, I'm driving, or my mom is driving, I'm not driving yet, and I'm in the car, and I look at my mom and I say, Mommy, what I want to do more than anything in the world is sing and dance. Can you please put me in dance classes? And what I loved about musical theater was that there was a way that the men in musical theater expressed themselves the way that I did in song and dance. And it was magical and mysterious, not the way that other Cuban boys my age presented, much less my identical twin brother. And my mother looked at me and she said, Eduardo, the kids already make fun of you. And if we put you in dance class, it's only gonna get worse. So I think it's best if we don't. And that light, that show-tonitis, that joy diminished and hid even more. And then in around 1992, I'm probably in 7th or 8th grade, this is called the World Book Encyclopedia, so this is a generational thing. It's a type of Saturday where everyone is home but no one is around. And I grab the H volume of the World Book Encyclopedia and I run to the bathroom and I lock the door and I start going through the pages. And I get to Honduras and it's too far and I keep flipping the pages and now I'm at Haiti and that's too early. And then finally I settle on the page and the article that I'm looking for, and the entry is homosexuality. And I don't know, but there's a part of me that's obviously curious because kids are calling me little girl and sissy and gay and all the other ones. And I devour the pages, reading it. And the last paragraph of the 1986 World Book Encyclopedia says that in some cases, if the person tries hard enough, they can change it. And I take those words and I tell myself, if there's anyone who can change it, is me. And all of my energy and all of my attention, all of my focus went on continuing to exercise that perfect child, do the best that I can, I's dotted, T's crossed. I lettered as a swimmer in 8th grade, varsity lettered. If I got rid of styrofoam in the high school cafeteria in the early 1990s, if there was a committee or a group, I was present, I was in charge, I was performing perfect child. And I also knew subconsciously that was a ticket out of Miami. And then I find myself at the University of Pennsylvania, the Ivy League. And I find myself in the quadrangle. It's very Hogwartsy, you know, the feel, the vibe. And it's that freshman evening where it's like now in the fall, where there's a little chill in the air. And it's that conversation where you're talking about life. Very freshman. And I'm actually having this conversation with someone that I went to high school with. And he's talking about Miami and growing up and stuff. And then all of a sudden I realize this conversation is changing. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that we're going from having a conversation to having the conversation. but he can't say what I feel like he's trying to say. So at one point I stop him and I say, do you want me to say out loud what I think you're trying to get at? And he looks at me relieved and he says, yes. And I said to him, I want you to be offended if I'm wrong, but what I think you're trying to tell me is that you may be gay. And he looked at me and he said, yes. And then I had this kind of out-of-body experience as my mouth was like saying all the things my parents told me to say. I accept you. You're still my friend. I'm still your friend. It's all bullshit. And while I was like looking, literally, I felt like this out-of-body experience. I was saying things like asking leading questions, how did you know, et cetera. But then all of a sudden there was like this moment of alignment where I dropped back into my body and I looked at him in the eyes and I said, you don't have to explain yourself to me because I know exactly how you feel. I'm bisexual. And then he looked at me and said, all right, I'm gay. I was like, bye for 22 seconds. And this is not a knock on bisexuality at all, but that was my own personal journey. And that moment of self-identifying, coming to terms and naming the truth of myself, saying it out loud, and then having the courage to say that to my Cuban parents 3 months later, and coming out of the closet, was an act of liberation. It was the first step in living a life without limits. Because what happened is that act of liberation allowed me to imagine a life outside of what my parents would have imagined my life could look like. I didn't have to be a doctor. I didn't have to be a lawyer. I didn't have to be an accountant. I could be whatever the hell I wanted to be. And what I did is I fueled that energy while I was in school. I joined the Glee Club, the Penn Glee Club. This was before the TV show Glee, so nobody knew what that was. So we had navy blazers, we had like red and blue ties, we had gray pants just like the Warblers. And with that group, I went to Spain and Morocco when I was a sophomore. My senior year, we went to Japan and Guam. I was a Mellon Minority Undergraduate Fellow. They paid for me to study abroad in London. I saw 40 shows in 5 weeks, fully funded. I saw more theater in 5 weeks than people see in a lifetime. And I pulled every opportunity towards me. And when I graduated, I said to my parents and I said to the world, I have played by everybody's rules. And now I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do in my entire life, which is I'm going to sing and I'm going to dance. And that's precisely what I did. And that gets us to Act 2. How to build a career in the theater, 7 lessons in the theater and also in entrepreneurship. And lesson number 1 is make a bold move. New York, a hell of a town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. New York, you're a hell of a town. I moved to New York City. And I moved with a dance belt, a Diet Coke, and a dream. And I was ready. And I ran into my first hurdle, which is that I had an emergency loan to pay off at the University of Pennsylvania in order to get my diploma. And I couldn't afford to work in the theater. At that point, to work as a non-union actor, you were getting paid less than $200 a week. So between that and rent in New York City and other debt that I accumulated, there was no way that I could work as an actor. So what I did is I tried to piece together the best way that I could some type of training, because again, I didn't have any training experience. I did 1 musical in undergrad. I did Once on This Island, and I was as ethnic as the show got, so we called it Once on Long Island. And what happened is I started piecing things together. So I had this Meisner acting program, and then I would take singing lessons, and then I did, thank you, Mother, what I always wanted to do, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-dum-bum. I took dance class at the Broadway Dance Center in New York City, and I was living my life. But the thing is, I also had to have a full-time job. So I was working for, there's no trust fund here. This is immigrant stock, purely self-funded kind of experience in the theater. And I was working for Standard & Poor's in human resources on Wall Street. And what I did is that because of that exercise that I did with my grandfather and the globe, they put me in charge of the visa applicants. So as people were applying for green cards and H-1B visas and all these things, because I knew where they were from, because I could locate them on the map, they gave me this amazing opportunity. So that was my day job. And then what I did is on an Excel spreadsheet, I mapped every other waking moment of the day. So on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and all day Sunday, so after work on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then all day Sunday, I would take dance classes. Ballet, tap, jazz, Fosse, all of it. And then on Tuesday nights and on Saturday mornings, I would do this crazy acting program where we would pound mattresses and count out our emotions and our feelings. I don't recommend it. And the truth is that paying for or doing 10 dance classes a week is really expensive. And I really couldn't afford that, but they had a work-study program. But because I worked during the days when the studio was open, I could only work at night, which means I had to be a janitor. So with an Ivy League degree in New York City, I become a janitor at the dance studio. So I clean the mirrors, I clean the floors, and I clean the toilets. So that leads to the next lesson, which is how hard are you willing to work to do what you love? And all that hard work paid off. And I ended up getting my first professional acting job out of New York City at the Carousel Dinner Theater in Akron, Ohio. So I went to the Carousel Dinner Theater and I was in My Fair Lady, and that production led to West Side Story. And that second production led to my equity card. My second professional production, I landed an equity card and I was ready. I moved to New York City. I am now a member of the Actors Union and I am ready to work. And I land, and a week after I land in New York City after this production, it's September 11th, 2001. The towers fall, New York and the world is at a standstill, and nothing is moving. And I have two professional acting credits on my resume and a union card. So that leads us to lesson number 3, which is the power of relationships. So remember that one production that I did in undergrad, Once on This Island? The director of that production was now in Washington, D.C. And he was working in Washington, D.C. at the Shakespeare Theater for Michael Kahn, the founder and former artistic director. And he was putting together a production of a very controversial play called Corpus Christi by Terrence McNally. And half the cast was from New York, and the other half of the cast was from Washington, D.C. And he remembered who I was in a cast. I am an ensemble builder. That is the energy that I bring into any company that I am in. And he said, I'm building an ensemble and I need you and I want you in that show. Can you come down to DC? And I said, absolutely. So I went down to DC, I spent 3 months in DC, and when the show finished, what was very clear to me was that all the actors in Washington, DC worked all the time. The actors in New York waited tables, they bartended, and only occasionally worked as actors. And I, again, did not grow up doing theater. I did not do community theater growing up as a child. I did not do theater really in college, right? I had 2 professional credits on my resume, and that was it. And I knew I needed to work. So I went back to rule number 1, make a bold move, and I left New York City and I moved to Washington, D.C. I gave up a rent-stabilized apartment in the heart of Greenwich Village, and I also left the union and I started from scratch. And that risk paid off. Because for the next 2 years, I worked non-stop. I worked at Arena Stage, I worked at the Shakespeare Theater. My first Shakespeare play was at the Shakespeare Theater in Washington, D.C. I did Moliere, I did a Sondheim musical at the Signature Theater. I did a posthumous world premiere of a Frank Lesser musical. And I was like, this is what I always wanted. Like, I had the versatility in the play. Actually, in the second year, I became a member of the union again by doing 3 shows back-to-back at Arena Stage. But what I noticed as I was doing that work was that there was something missing. I'd gotten as far as I could get on raw talent and on grit, but I knew I needed to train. And so what I did is I said, I'm going to apply to grad school. I knew the gap for me was an M.F.A. acting program, and what I did is I applied to the top 3 at the time, which were NYU, Yale, and UCSD. Now, I was in tech and in rehearsals during this audition season, so it was really hard to finagle that. And I was able to make it to New York for the New York audition, the NYU audition. I was able to make it to New Haven for the Yale audition, but I could not square a time to make it to the UCSD audition because I was in the midst of tech rehearsals for a play. And this is where I leveraged the power of relationships. So I was doing 3 plays at Arena Stage. The one show that I was not in was directed by the woman who ran the theater department at UCSD. Also, one of the actors in my company at Corpus Christi was now in school at UCSD. So I reached out to as many people as I knew who knew her so that I could have a conversation with her to see if there was any other opportunity to audition for the program. And she said, look, I'm actually traveling down to Washington, D.C. Her partner at the time was in a play, and I can audition you at Arena Stage. Now the thing is, you're at a major disadvantage because I audition in committee. And I said, I'm gonna take any opportunity I have, so if you will see me, I will audition. So we met at the basement of Arena Stage. I did my monologues, we had a beautiful conversation, and that was it. And 6 weeks later, I had been officially rejected from NYU, Yale, and UCSD. Yay! Now, if anything, I am resilient. And now we come upon, back to musical theater and The Sound of Music, one of my favorite quotes, which is, whenever God closes a door, somewhere he opens a window. But I also like to say there are a lot of other doors. And what happened is 6 weeks after I got that letter from Kyle Donnelly saying that they didn't have a spot for me, I got a phone call from San Diego, and it's Kyle Donnelly, and she said, one of the people that we gave an offer to turned it down. I remembered you, I remembered your audition. I have 1 spot, I have no money. If you want it, it's yours. I said, you had me at hello. And 6 weeks later, I packed up a U-Haul truck and I moved to San Diego, and I started my M.F.A. acting program in La Jolla at UCSD. And that was 2.5 years of pure bliss, where I didn't have, because I couldn't just take acting, like I couldn't afford to just take acting classes all day long. I had to work, like I had to have a job. And what the graduate program did is it gave me the space to actually focus just on my craft, the luxury and the privilege of time and space to just be an actor, do voice work, text work, body work, singing. And the thing that is really crafty and really interesting at UCSD is all the actors teach undergrads. So we teach undergrads acting, and we also teach them public speaking. And I thought that's a very practical thing to have in my back pocket after I finish this program, because the truth is that as an actor, because I was an actor for 5 years before I went to grad school, that you have to, there's always a hustle. There's always some other job that you need in order to make it work. So I was like, this could be really useful in the future. And so I graduate from UCSD, and then I lead a career in the theater. And what I think it's important to note is that natural talent may get you a job, but craft is what's going to build a career. It's great if you can do it on the audition, but can you do that 8 shows a week? Over 9 months or a year, right? That's a different skill set and a different ability. And what happened is I found my home in repertory acting companies. To me, repertory acting companies felt unlimited because I could do Shakespeare and musical theater and a new play and a classic play. So I had the privilege of playing Angel in Rent and Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream and the MC in Cabaret. So I was fluctuating, sometimes even in a given repertory season, all these different styles, and I felt very full by that experience. And then I was given the opportunity, again, I worked at the Pearl Theater, which was in New York City, which doesn't exist anymore, at Great Lakes Theater Festival here in Cleveland, Idaho Shakespeare Festival, Lake Tahoe Shakespeare Festival, and then the Golden Palace of the Repertory Theater Himalayas, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon, where I spent 2 years as a company member. And it was at OSF that I was gifted with an opportunity to produce their HIV and AIDS fundraiser called the Daedalus Project. Now, I had never done anything like this before. And when you didn't know what to do at that point, again, I didn't have a degree in producing or anything. I went to the internet and I looked up TED Talks. And I found this extraordinary TED Talk that has since gone viral by Simon Sinek. It's called Start With a Why. And what he says is that that most people will tell you what they want you to do by telling you what to do, as opposed to why it matters, why it's important. And the truth, I believe, is that people are moved and motivated by a shared vision and a shared mission. And so what I did, this was the 26th anniversary of this fundraiser. The 25th had been a big blowout, and everybody was exhausted and depleted, and nobody wanted to do it, which is why they gave it to a new company member to take on. And what I said is, we are not producing a fundraiser. What we're going to channel is the energy to end AIDS. And people showed up. We expanded that event from 6 events to 10, including a film festival in partnership with the Ashland Independent Film Festival, and we raised 40% more than they had ever raised before. It was a complete and total blowout. There was a community choir normally in the shows, in the final variety show that had maybe 20 people. I had 120 people on that stage. And it was everybody showing up in community, in the expression of a shared commitment, and it was absolutely magical. And then I find myself on this beach in Oregon in June of 2014, and it's Black Monday. And what happens on that day, it's the day you find out whether or not you have casting in the next season or not. So what happens at OSF is there are 100 actors in the company, and not everyone's guaranteed a job the next season. Actually, nobody's guaranteed a job the next season. And there's this all algorithm about how you fit into the repertory. And what happens is there's one day where everybody finds out whether you have a job or you don't have a job for the next year. And there are 2 ways that goes. One is you get an email that says, congratulations, we're so happy that you have this offering. This is the casting for the next season. Or email number 2 is the artistic director would like to speak to you from this window. Please make sure that you're available. You want the first one, you don't want the second one. And I got the second one. And I was heartbroken. Now, I had strategically planned to greet this news in a beautiful location. So I am sitting on a log on this gorgeous beach in Oregon, and I can smell I can hear the waves crashing, the smell of the sea air. And Bill Rausch, the artistic director, calls me, and I pick up the phone. We exchange some niceties, and then he says to me, Eduardo, I never thought we would find ourselves in this predicament, but the truth is I don't have a job for you next season, and I'm really sorry. And it is in the face of that very disappointing news that I practice what I call the 3 Gs, which are grace, gratitude, and generosity. I take a really deep breath, and I say, first of all, obviously this is not the news that I was expecting. I'm really sad and I'm really upset. But I'm going to take this moment to express my profound gratitude for the 2 years that I've had here. This has been an extraordinary experience. It's been the joy of my artistic career to find a home here for the seasons that I have. So thank you. And second, there's an amazing term that we have in Spanish called dar la cara, which means to give face. And nowadays, it's very difficult because we have 17 different modes of technology to avoid actually having a difficult conversation. And what I said is, I want to thank you for having the immense courage to create a space to actually say this to me out loud with your voice. So we can be in this discomfort together. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And even though I don't want to hear that news, it is profoundly humane and loving to be here and witness that together. So thank you. I hung up the phone, and then I was really pissed. And then I screamed and I raged and I was like, I hate you! And I did all the things to really allow myself my feelings. I did not resist the feelings, but I allowed myself to move through the anger and the disappointment and the grief and the upset. And then I went to Dairy Queen and I had the biggest blizzard I ever had in my entire life, and I stuffed my face and I ate my feelings like a person. And then I found myself, a couple weeks after that, still navigating those feelings in conversation with a dear director, colleague of mine, who was there to see shows. And we were having dinner, and she said to me, we were having this conversation, and I was already sitting with, is an acting career it? Am I really ready for something else? And she said to me, Eduardo, you're a competent and good actor. At this other stuff, you're extraordinary. Now that's a dose of honesty that I was ready for. And the truth is, again, I've been in lots of plays, I've been in lots of rooms, and I have been in rooms with actors that I know are extraordinary. And if I look and analyze myself truly, like I'm a great company member, yes, I do roles, I can do the shows, I can sing, I can dance, I can do the whole thing, but I really show up with artistic director energy. I'm the guy in the cast who's like, why are they lighting that? Why didn't they cut that song? They should have organized the script. They should have cut that line. Why isn't the education department talking to the marketing department? And that's not really the task of the actor. That's something else. But my creativity had a different level of expansion and curiosity, and the truth is that an acting career for me was limiting. It was not it. And it's in that space that I went back to rule number one, being brave, making a bold move, that I then moved to New York City, and I started my acting career again with no dance belt, but still a Diet Coke and a dream, to start my business, Fearless Communicators. Now the truth is that I'd been a hustler all along. So I'd started a photography business while I was in grad school. My first wedding was in Jamaica, the second one was in Colombia. I directed and choreographed. I started a side hustle to Fearless Communicators called Speak the Speech, where I would befriend board members of theater companies that I was at, and they would invite me into their companies to facilitate lead workshops. So I knew that I had these tools and these skill sets, but I needed to focus them into one specific area. And that was the birth of Fearless Communicators. Fearless Communicators is a diverse, inclusive public speaking coaching business. We work with individuals and organizations on what they say and how they say it, so content creation and delivery. And like Paul said, our clients include US presidential candidates, UN diplomats, 7 first ladies from 7 African countries, really people who are on the front line of doing the work of the world and elevating those voices. And all that I have used and fused is everything that I learned being an actor and in grad school. That has been what has served in setting up this business and how I teach and facilitate. And what I learned being a teacher for undergraduates was that I believe there are 2 flawed ways that we teach public speaking. The first is that I believe we teach public speaking purely as an intellectual exercise. Yes, speaking is an intellectual exercise, but it's also a physical, spiritual, and emotional exercise. And oftentimes people's bodies and emotions betray them when they're standing in front of an audience and they have no idea how to calibrate that. The second thing is I believe we teach leadership the same way we teach speaking, which is performance of straight white male cisgender power. And if we're really interested in having conversations about leadership looking differently, then we have to be open to power looking and sounding differently than it has historically. And that means that presentation and performance is all about externalizing something, playing a role. Executive presence. What if executive presence is I'm an executive and I'm present? And it is in that space that I invented something, a framework in how it is that we facilitate public speaking, which is not presentation or performance, but what I call presensation. And presensation is being grounded in body, present in mind, leading from the heart, and speaking into the spirit of our shared humanity. I'm going to say that again. Grounded in body, present in mind, leading from the heart, and speaking into the spirit of our shared humanity. There's an amazing saying, it comes from the Asaro tribe of Papua New Guinea, which is knowledge is only rumor until it lives in the muscle. We begin working with all of our clients on activating their bodies and doing a physical vocal warm-up. For those of you who've done acting classes, that's literally what we do. Shaking, shimmying, hands, topeka bodega. And that is like a revolution to people who've never taken a theater class before. Because they're like, oh my God, I'm a person with a body in front of people. Wow. But that becomes fundamental in giving them power showing up in front of an audience. The second thing, I have this quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which is the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now, I thought that that was a period, but if you notice, the quote continues. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. There's a well-known statistic, which is that 76% of people suffer from speech anxiety, and I believe everybody else lies. And the root of it is like me in 2nd grade at show and tell at Pinewood Acres Elementary School, standing in front of people, when I said something that was true, and the room and the world around me told me that is not true, and it is not safe for you to say that. And that anxiety, that fear, also locates itself in your body. There's a physical response to that. So what we do is a process of neutralizing that fear. So we actually invite the fear in and neutralize it so we have a new way to show up powerfully, not driven by that fear. And the last piece comes from a famous Maya Angelou quote, which is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that is the power of story and storytelling. Giving people the tool not of talking about themselves, not timelining, not sharing their bio, but actually learning the art and craft of telling a story. These are some of the extraordinary human beings who we've had the pleasure to serve. Again, people who are on the front line of the conversations that I believe are building a better world. When we started, I told you I was going to give you a keynote in 3 acts with a prologue and an epilogue. And I hope that what I've modeled for you today is everything that I've learned in the theater. Not to mention a structure that is based on the theater. A prologue, an epilogue, 3 acts. For the theater people in the room, if you notice, my 3 acts are also plays on Stanislavski's books. An actor prepares, building a character, creating a role. I told you our journey is grounded in body, present in mind, leading from the heart, and that last piece is speaking into the spirit of our shared humanity. The root word of the word spirit is the same root word as the word to inspire, or expire, or aspire, which means to breathe. When we inspire, we breathe in. When we expire, we breathe out. When we aspire, it is with breath. And when we speak, our breath rides our voice. Without our breath, there is no voice, there is no speaking. And what happens is when I speak, when I share with you as I have shared today, what I have shared is my spirit with you. This isn't TV. This isn't a stream. This is live people in space in a room. And this space models a ritual that takes us to the organizing principle of how we formed as human beings. Around a circle, around a fire, sharing story. And that is not just fundamental to our humanity, it is also the foundation of theater. My friends, everything is theater. And theater comes from the root word from the ancient Greek, which means the place of seeing. Now, yes, you are seeing me, but more importantly, my wish is that you're not just seeing me, but through me, you are seeing yourself. That this ritual is an opportunity for us to witness and bear witness through my sharing of my life experience and my story, that you can witness and see yourself in any part of that narrative that I shared. And it is in that exercise, in that ritual of seeing, that I think we start to flex a much-needed muscle today. And that muscle that needs flexing is not being better students or better colleagues or better workers. Sure, that's a part of it. But at the root of it, what this ritual creates is an opportunity for us to learn how to be better people. And with that, my friends, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, and I am so grateful that we got to spend this time together. Thank you.